the dust devil that swirled through the Apache camp on that scorching Arizona afternoon in June of 1876, carried with it an omen nobody could have predicted, least of all Aiyana Otsana, who stood grinding mesquite beans outside her family's wickiup when the stranger rode in on a paint horse that looked half dead from thirst. Owen Garrett dismounted slowly, his hands visible and empty, knowing full well that approaching any Apache settlement uninvited was a quick way to meet your maker. He had been tracking a band of horse thieves for 3 weeks across the Sonoran Desert, and his canteen had run dry 2 days back. The sun had baked his thoughts down to one simple truth: find water or die trying. Aiyana watched him with dark eyes that missed nothing. She was 20 years old, unmarried by choice rather than circumstance, and had turned down 3 proposals from warriors in her own band because none of them had stirred anything in her heart beyond mild affection. Her grandmother said she was too particular. Her mother said she was waiting for something. Aiyana herself did not know what she was waiting for, only that she would recognize it when it arrived. The stranger stood perhaps 30 feet away, swaying slightly in the heat. His lips were cracked and bleeding, his face sunburned raw beneath several days of dark stubble. He was young, maybe 24 or 25, with gray eyes that even in his desperate state held a certain steadiness. He did not beg. He did not plead. He simply stood there, and that restraint spoke more eloquently than words ever could. Aiyana's uncle, Nantai, emerged from his dwelling with his rifle, followed by 2 other men. The camp, hidden in a canyon near what the white Meng called the Superstition Mountains, was home to about 40 people who had chosen to live in the traditional way rather than submit to the reservation system that sought to cage them like animals. They were cautious of all outsiders, especially white men who often brought nothing but trouble and broken promises. "He is dying," Aiyana said in Apache, her voice carrying clearly in the still air. "We do not let even our enemies die of thirst. It is not our way." Nantai studied the stranger with narrowed eyes. "He wears a gun. He has not reached for it." Aiyana set down her grinding stone and picked up a clay water vessel. She walked toward Owen Garrett with the fluid grace of someone completely at home in her own skin, unafraid and unhurried. Owen watched her approach, barely daring to hope. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with the simpering painted ladies he had seen in saloons, and everything to do with the wild desert landscape itself, untamed and essential. She wore a deerskin dress decorated with small shells and turquoise beads, and her long black hair hung in a thick braid down her back. "Drink slowly," she said in surprisingly clear English, holding out the vessel. His hands shook as he took it. The water was cool and tasted of clay and salvation. He forced himself to sip rather than gulp, though every fiber of his being screamed for more. When he had drunk perhaps half the vessel's contents, he handed it back. "Thank you," he managed, his voice like gravel. "My horse needs water too." Aiyana glanced at the paint horse, then back at Owen. Most white men would have drunk their fill before thinking of their animals. This one had stopped himself mid-thirst to speak for his horse. She made a gesture, and a young boy ran forward to lead the paint to the small spring that fed the camp. "Why are you here?" Nantai demanded, still holding his rifle ready. Owen met his eyes directly, with respect but without fear. "Tracking horse thieves, 3 men riding southwest. They stole a breeding pair from a rancher near Tucson. The rancher's name is Tom Berkeley. He is a good man who paid me to bring his horses back. I do not want trouble with your people. I only want water and to rest a few hours, then I will go." "You track them alone?" Nantai asked, skepticism clear in his voice. "I work alone." Owen swayed again, and Aiyana caught his arm without thinking. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her like touching lightning. His skin was fever-hot beneath her fingers. "He has sun sickness," she said. "He needs shade and time to recover. If we send him out now, he will die within half a day." Nantai and the other men conferred in rapid Apache. Aiyana kept her hand on Owen's arm, feeling his pulse beating too fast beneath his burned skin. She should have let go, but something kept her fingers where they were, some instinct she did not fully understand. Finally, Nantai nodded curtly. "He can stay until tomorrow morning, but someone must watch him always. You brought him here, Aiyana. He is your responsibility." She inclined her head in acceptance, ignoring the slight smile on her uncle's face. Nantai was not subtle in his desire to see her married, though she doubted he had imagined her choosing a white man. Aiyana led Owen to a small shelter at the edge of the camp, a simple structure of branches and hides that provided shade from the merciless sun. He sank down onto a woven mat with a groan of relief, and she brought him more water along with some pemmican and mesquite cakes. "Eat slowly," she instructed, settling down across from him. "Your stomach will rebel if you rush." Owen nodded, taking small bites of the pemmican. It was good, rich, and satisfying. He studied her as he ate, trying to reconcile his expectations with reality. He had heard terrible stories about the Apache, tales of raids and violence that had made them feared across the Southwest. But he had also heard other stories, whispered by old-timers who knew the truth, about how the Apache had been driven from their lands, hunted like animals, their children stolen and sent to boarding schools, their way of life systematically destroyed by an expanding nation that wanted their mountains and deserts. "My name is Owen Garrett," he said after a while. "I am Aiyana Otsana. Aiyana means eternal blossom. Otsana was my grandfather's name. It means leaving. Leaving what? Just leaving. He was a wanderer, even among our people." She poured herself some water from a different vessel. "Your Spanish is poor, and your Apache is non-existent, but your English is educated. You are not a common cowboy." Owen smiled despite himself. "My mother was a schoolteacher in St. Louis. She made sure I could read and write before she died. My father was a drunk who gambled away everything we had. I came west when I was 16 to start over. Been working as a tracker and scout ever since. The desert makes sense to me in a way cities never did." "The desert keeps no secrets," Aiyana said. "Everything is exposed. There is no room for lies." "Is that why you live here, away from the reservation?" Her face hardened slightly. "The reservation is a cage. They want us to forget who we are, to become poor copies of white farmers scratching in dirt that will not grow corn. My people have lived in these mountains for more generations than anyone can count. We know every spring, every game trail, every plant that heals and every plant that kills. Why should we give that up to stand in line for rancid beef and moth-eaten blankets?" The passion in her voice stirred something in Owen's chest. He had seen the reservations, the despair and sickness that festered there. He had also seen the injustice that drove people to those places, the casual cruelty of government agents who treated human beings like inconvenient obstacles to progress. "I do not blame you," he said quietly. "I have seen what happens on the reservations. It is not right." Aiyana studied him with those penetrating dark eyes as if trying to see into his soul. "Most white men do not say such things. Most white men do not think about anything beyond their own comfort and profit. But you are different." There was challenge in her voice, but also curiosity. "I try to be. I do not always succeed." Owen finished the pemmican and set the empty vessel aside. "I judge people by their actions, not by the color of their skin or the language they speak. There are good people and bad people in every tribe and nation. The horse thieves I am tracking are white men. They would steal from their own mothers if they thought they could profit from it. Aiyana rose and retrieved a small clay jar from a parfleche bag hanging on the shelter's frame. This is made from aloe and other plants. It will help your burns. She knelt beside him and began applying the cool salve to his face with gentle fingers. Owen held very still, hardly daring to breathe. Her touch was careful and sure, and the medicine brought immediate relief to his scorched skin. He found himself studying her face from mere inches away, noticing the delicate structure of her cheekbones, the subtle curve of her lips, the small scar above her left eyebrow. "How did you get that scar?" he asked softly. "I fell from a horse when I was learning to ride. My grandmother said it was because I was too bold trying to gallop before I could trot." She smiled slightly. "I have always been impatient. And now, are you a good rider?" "I am the best rider in this camp, including the men, though they would never admit it." There was no arrogance in her voice, just simple fact. Owen found himself smiling. "I believe you." Their eyes met and held. Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition that went beyond words or logic. Aiyana felt her pulse quicken and she drew back, unsettled by the intensity of her own reaction. "You should rest," she said, her voice not quite steady. "The sun's sickness takes time to pass." Owen wanted to protest, to keep her talking, but exhaustion was already pulling him down. His eyes drifted closed despite his best efforts, and he fell into a deep sleep that was full of strange dreams about desert flowers and dark eyes. Aiyana sat watching him sleep as the afternoon wore on toward evening. She should have left, should have asked someone else to take over the watch, but she could not seem to make herself move. There was something about this man, this stranger who had ridden into her life on a half-dead horse, that called to something deep within her. She had waited 20 years without knowing what she was waiting for. Perhaps this was it. Perhaps this was him. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. As the sun began to set, painting the canyon walls in shades of orange and purple, Aiyana's mother came to check on her. Aiyana Otsana was a handsome woman in her mid-40s, with silver beginning to thread through her black hair and the same penetrating gaze as her daughter. "So this is the white man who has captured my daughter's attention," Aiyana said in Apache, settling down beside Aiyana. "I am only watching him as Uncle Nantai commanded. You are watching him as a woman watches a man she finds interesting." Aiyana's voice was gentle without judgment. "I have seen that look before. I wore it when I first saw your father." Aiyana felt heat rise in her cheeks. "He is a stranger. A white man. It is foolish to feel anything. The heart does not consult the mind before it feels." Aiyana reached out and tucked a stray strand of hair behind her daughter's ear. "But be careful, my daughter. The world is not kind to those who cross the lines between peoples. There would be difficulty from both sides. I know." Aiyana's voice was barely a whisper, "But mother, when he looked at me, I felt something I have never felt before, like recognizing someone I have known my whole life, even though we only just met." Aiyana nodded slowly. "That is how it was with your father and me. We both just knew." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "But knowing does not make the path easier. You must decide if what you feel is worth the hardship that will surely come." Before Aiyana could respond, Owen stirred and opened his eyes. He looked momentarily confused, then focused on the two women sitting near him. He started to sit up and Aiyana gestured for him to remain still. "You are still recovering," she said in English that was heavily accented but clear. "I am Aiyana, Aiyana's mother. You are welcome in our camp until morning." "Thank you for your hospitality, madam," Owen said. his natural courtesy asserting itself despite his disorientation. "I am grateful." Chesmu studied him with the same intense gaze her daughter possessed. "My daughter says you track horse thieves alone. This is dangerous work." "Yes, madam, but I am good at it, and it pays better than cowboying or mining." "And what will you do when you find these thieves?" Owen's expression hardened slightly. "I will give them the chance to surrender and return the horses peacefully. If they refuse, I will take the horses back by force and bring the men to justice if I can. 3 men against 1. The odds are poor. I have faced poor odds before." He said it without bravado, simply stating a fact. Chesmu rose to her feet with fluid grace. "There is wisdom in knowing when to ask for help. Pride has killed more men than bullets." She looked at her daughter. "I will send food for both of you. Make sure he eats." After she left, an oddly comfortable silence fell between Aiyana and Owen. The camp was coming alive with the sounds of evening, children laughing and playing, women calling to each other, the smell of cooking fires drifting on the cooling air. "Your mother is formidable," Owen said after a while. "She has had to be. My father was killed 5 years ago by soldiers who raided a peaceful gathering. He was trying to protect the children." Aiyana's voice was flat, but Owen could hear the old pain beneath it. "I am sorry. That is an inadequate thing to say, but I am sorry nonetheless. It is the way of things now. Your people want our land and they will do anything to take it." She looked at him directly. "I do not blame you personally. You were not there, but you must understand why we trust no white men." "I understand. And yet you saved my life today. I told you. We do not let even our enemies die of thirst. It would violate the balance of things." Aiyana picked up a stick and began drawing patterns in the dust at her feet. "But you are not my enemy, Owen Garrett. I do not know what you are, but you are not that." A young girl brought food then, eyeing Owen with frank curiosity before scurrying away. Aiyana divided the meal between them. Roasted rabbit, some kind of root vegetable Owen did not recognize, and flat bread made from mesquite flour. They ate in companionable silence as the stars began to emerge overhead, so many and so bright they seemed close enough to touch. "Tell me about the horse thieves," Aiyana said eventually. "What do they look like?" Owen described the 3 men in detail. Red Callahan, a hulking brute with a scar across his nose; Jimmy Dalton, young and mean with eyes too close together; and Marcus Webb, the leader, a smooth-talking con man who had left a trail of swindles and petty crimes from Texas to California. "I tracked them to a water hole about 15 miles southeast of here," Owen said. "But I lost their trail in the rocks. They are either hiding nearby or they have moved on toward Tucson or Phoenix. Or they have come here," Aiyana said quietly. Owen stiffened. "What do you mean?" 3 white men with horses came through the canyon 2 days ago. They camped at the old Spanish ruins about 5 miles west of here. We watched them but did not approach. They seemed nervous, always looking over their shoulders. They left yesterday morning, heading north." Owen felt excitement surge through him, temporarily banishing his exhaustion. "Did you see the horses? A sorrel mare and a black stallion, both with white stockings." "I did not see them myself, but I can ask." Aiyana rose and walked to the nearest campfire where several people were gathered. She spoke rapidly in Apache, and an older man responded, his hands moving in descriptive gestures. She returned to Owen with a thoughtful expression. "He says yes, he saw horses matching that description. The black one was magnificent with spirit and fire. The sorrel was heavy with foal." "That is them," Owen said, starting to get up. "I need to go after them." Aiyana put a hand on his shoulder, pressing him back down. "You need to finish recovering. If you go now, weak and sick, you will fail. They have a 2-day head start." One more night will not matter, and you will be stronger for it. Owen wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. His body still felt like it was made of wet rope, and his head swam when he moved too quickly. I hate losing time. Time lost to wisdom is not truly lost. Aiyana settled back down beside him. Besides, I can help you track them. I know this country better than any white man ever will. I cannot ask you to do that. It will be dangerous. You did not ask, I offered. Her eyes flashed with determination. Those men camped near our canyon, which means they know we are here. If they are the kind of men who would steal horses, they are the kind of men who might tell others where we are. That puts my people at risk. I have my own reasons for wanting them gone from this area. Owen studied her face, illuminated by the distant firelight. She was serious, and he realized that arguing would be pointless. You are a stubborn woman, Aiyana Otsana. Yes, she agreed without a hint of apology. I am. They talked late into the night, their conversation ranging from the practical details of tracking to deeper matters of life and belief. Owen found himself telling her things he had never told anyone, about his mother's death when he was 12, about his father's descent into alcoholism and violence, about the loneliness that had driven him west into the vast empty spaces where a man could disappear and start over. Aiyana, in turn, spoke of her childhood in these mountains, of learning the old ways from her grandmother, of the growing pressure to move to the reservation and abandon everything that gave life meaning. She spoke of friends and relatives who had already made that choice and how they had become shadows of themselves, lost and purposeless. Sometimes I am afraid, she admitted in a quiet voice. Afraid that no matter how hard we fight, no matter how well we hide, eventually they will find us and force us onto the reservation too. And then, who will remember the old songs? Who will know where the sacred places are? Who will speak the language of our grandfathers? Owen reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. You will remember. You will teach others. As long as one person carries the knowledge, it is not lost. Her fingers curled around his, and they sat like that for a long time, hands clasped, looking up at the stars that had watched over this land long before either of their peoples had arrived and would continue watching long after they were gone. Eventually, Aiyana made him lie down again, and she covered him with a soft deerskin blanket. Sleep now. Tomorrow we hunt horse thieves. Owen caught her hand before she could move away. Why are you doing this? Really? She looked down at him, her face half in shadow. Because when I touched you today, I felt something, and I want to know what it means. With that, she settled down near the entrance to the shelter, wrapped in her own blanket, positioned so she could watch both Owen and the camp beyond. Owen lay awake for a while, listening to her breathing, feeling more at peace than he had in years. Whatever tomorrow brought, however this ended, he knew his life had changed the moment that Dust Devil had carried him to this place. He woke before dawn to find Aiyana already up, speaking quietly with a group of men near one of the fires. His horse had been cared for, he noticed, brushed and fed and looking considerably better than yesterday. Someone had also cleaned and checked his saddle and gear, which sat neatly beside the shelter. Aiyana saw him stirring and brought over food and water. How do you feel? Owen took stock of himself. His head was clear, his skin felt better though still tender, and his strength seemed mostly restored. Much better. Your medicine works. My grandmother's medicine, Aiyana corrected. I only prepared it. She knows all the healing plants. She sat down beside him. I have been talking with the men. They say the thieves are probably heading toward a settlement called Wickenburg. There is a man there who buys stolen horses, no questions asked. If we ride hard, we might intercept them before they get there. Owen raised an eyebrow. So you have definitely decided to come along. I have. She met his gaze steadily. My uncle has given permission, though he thinks I am crazy. He has offered 2 men to come with us, but I told him no. 3 people can move faster and quieter than 5. And you were planning to face them alone anyway, so 2 is already an improvement. Owen could not argue with her logic, and truthfully, he did not want to. The thought of spending more time with Aiyana, of riding beside her through the desert, sent a thrill through him that had nothing to do with horse thieves and everything to do with the way she moved, the way she spoke, the way she looked at him like she could see straight through to his bones. "All right," he said, "partners then, but you follow my lead when we catch up to them. I do not want you getting hurt." Aiyana smiled, and it transformed her face from merely beautiful to radiant. "I will follow your lead in the fighting, but in the tracking you follow mine." "Agreed, agreed." They set out within the hour, Aiyana on a tough little pinto mare that moved like water over the rocky ground. She had changed into clothes more suited for hard riding, deerskin leggings, a shorter tunic, and a vest decorated with intricate beadwork. Her long braid was wrapped and pinned close to her head, and she carried a rifle across her back along with a knife at her belt. Owen had recovered his own weapons, a Colt revolver and a Winchester rifle. He felt self-conscious riding beside her, this Apache woman who sat her horse like she had been born on it, who read the landscape like other people read books. She made him feel clumsy and obvious, a blunt instrument where she was a precision tool. But she did not treat him with condescension. Instead, she pointed out signs as they rode, teaching him to see what she saw. The faint scrape of a horseshoe on rock, the disturbed pebbles where animals had passed, the broken twig that indicated the direction of travel. "You are not bad at this," she said after they had been riding for a couple of hours. "But you rely too much on obvious signs. You need to learn to see what is not there as much as what is." "What do you mean?" She pointed to a stretch of ground that looked completely unremarkable to Owen. "See how the dust sits on those rocks. It has not been disturbed, but on either side the dust is slightly displaced. That means something passed through here, and it was careful to step over those rocks rather than on them. That tells me whoever made this trail knew they were being followed and tried to hide their tracks." Owen stared at the rocks, seeing what she meant now that she had pointed it out. "That is brilliant. That is survival. In the old days, being able to track or hide your trail meant the difference between life and death. My people have been doing this for countless generations. Your people are still new to this land. You have not learned its language yet." They rode on through the morning, following signs invisible to anyone but someone with Aiyana's skills. The desert slowly changed around them as they moved north, the towering saguaro cacti giving way to more Joshua trees and scrub brush. The heat built steadily, but it was a dry heat that Owen found preferable to the humid misery of a Missouri summer. Around midday, Aiyana held up a hand and reined in her horse. She dismounted and knelt to examine the ground, her fingers tracing patterns Owen could not see. "They are closer than I thought," she said quietly. "Maybe 3 or 4 hours ahead of us, and one of the horses is lame. See here, how this print is deeper on one side. The black stallion has picked up a stone or is developing a bruise in his hoof. They will have to slow down or risk ruining him. Can we catch them before nightfall? If we push hard, yes, but we should rest the horses for an hour at midday. They cannot help us if they are exhausted." She stood and walked to a small cluster of rocks that provided a sliver of shade. "We will wait here." They sat together in the meager shade, sharing water and dried meat. Owen found himself watching Aiyana more than he should, admiring the clean lines of her profile, the way the sunlight caught in her hair where it had escaped its pins. She caught him looking and smiled. "What are you thinking about, Owen Garrett?" He considered lying, then decided against it. "The desert keeps no secrets," she had said. "I am thinking that I have never met anyone like you, and I am thinking that when this is over, I do not want to say goodbye." Aiyana's smile faded, replaced by something more serious. "I have been thinking the same thing, but I do not know what to do about it. Our peoples are at war, even if we personally are not. There is no place in this world for a white man and an Apache woman together." "We could make a place," Owen said, surprised by the intensity in his own voice. "I do not care what other people think. I have spent my whole life not fitting in anywhere. Maybe that is because I was waiting to find where I belong. Maybe where I belong is with you." "You do not know me well enough to say that. I know you better than I have ever known anyone. I know you are brave and skilled and honest. I know you love your people and your land. I know that when I look at you, something in my chest feels like it is going to crack open. Is that enough?" Aiyana looked away, but not before he saw the tears gathering in her eyes. "It is enough and too much. Owen, even if we wanted to be together, how would it work? I cannot leave my people. They need me. And you cannot live with the Apache. The soldiers would hunt you as a deserter or a traitor. Then we will find a third way. We will make our own life, somewhere between your world and mine." He reached out and gently turned her face back toward him. "Unless you do not feel the same way. If this is only me being a fool, tell me now and I will never speak of it again." She met his eyes, and in hers he saw the same longing and fear and hope that churned in his own heart. "You are a fool," she whispered. "And so am I, because I feel it too, this impossible thing between us." They kissed then, there in the shade of desert rocks with the sun beating down and the horses cropping at sparse grass nearby. It was a tentative kiss at first, exploratory, learning the shape and taste of each other. Then it deepened, became more urgent, full of all the things they could not yet say aloud. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Aiyana pressed her forehead against his. "We should not have done that," she said, but she was smiling. "Probably not," Owen agreed. "But I am not sorry. Neither am I." She pulled back, her expression turning practical even as her eyes still held warmth. "But we have work to do. The horse thieves will not catch themselves." They remounted and continued north, riding harder now, pushing the pace. The kiss had changed something between them, removing a barrier, making them more than temporary allies. Owen found himself thinking about a future he had never imagined before, wondering if it was truly possible to build a life with this woman who had appeared in his path, like a mirage made real. As the afternoon sun began its descent toward the western horizon, Aiyana spotted smoke in the distance. She led them to a rise where they could look down into a shallow valley. There, camped beside a struggling creek, were 3 men and 5 horses, including a sorrel mare and a black stallion that matched Tom Berkeley's descriptions perfectly. "That is them," Owen confirmed, studying the camp through his rifle scope. "And it looks like they have picked up 2 more horses somewhere along the way. Stolen, probably," Aiyana said. "Men like that do not pay for what they can take." She studied the camp's layout with a tactical eye. "They are careless. No sentries, no one watching the back trail. They think they are safe. We wait for dark," Owen said. "Then we move in quiet, take the horses, and be gone before they know what happened. I would rather avoid a fight if possible. You are learning." Aiyana squeezed his arm approvingly. "Violence should be the last choice, not the first. We will be like coyotes, taking what we want and vanishing into the night." They withdrew to a sheltered spot and waited for sunset. As the light faded, they prepared themselves, checking weapons and planning their approach. Aiyana produced a small clay jar from her pack. "What is that?" Owen asked. "Ash mixed with animal fat. It will darken our skin and kill the shine that gives people away in moonlight. She began applying it to her face and hands, then offered the jar to Owen. Here, you need it more than I do. He darkened his face and any exposed skin, feeling foolish until he looked at Aiyana and saw how the mixture made her nearly invisible in the gathering darkness. They truly were coyotes now, predators of the night. They moved down toward the camp on foot, leaving their horses hobbled and hidden. Aiyana led the way, her movements so quiet Owen could barely hear her even though she was right in front of him. He did his best to match her stealth, placing each foot carefully, avoiding anything that might snap or rustle. The three men sat around their fire, passing a bottle and talking in loud voices about what they would do with the money from selling the horses. They were clearly drunk or well on their way, which would make things easier. Aiyana pointed to herself and then to the horses, indicating she would handle that part. She pointed to Owen and made a gesture that meant wait and watch. He nodded, understanding. She disappeared into the darkness like smoke, and Owen positioned himself behind a large boulder where he could see the entire camp. He kept his rifle ready, hoping he would not need to use it but prepared if things went wrong. The horses were picketed on the far side of the camp. Owen watched in admiration as Aiyana materialized beside them, moving between the animals like she was one of them, touching them gently, speaking to them in a voice too low for him to hear, but that seemed to calm them instantly. The black stallion, who had been pawing restlessly, settled under her hands. She worked with smooth efficiency, untying the picket lines one by one. The stolen horses, including Berkeley's breeding pair, she gathered together. The thieves' own mounts she left secured but loosened their ties enough that they could eventually work themselves free. One of the men stood up suddenly, and Owen's heart jumped into his throat. But the man only walked a few paces from the fire to relieve himself, his back to where Aiyana worked. She froze, invisible in the shadows, waiting until he finished and returned to his companions before continuing her work. Finally, she had all 5 stolen horses gathered. She led them away from the camp in a wide arc that would bring her back to where Owen waited. It seemed to take forever, each minute stretching like taffy, but in reality it was probably less than 10 minutes before she appeared beside him with the horses in tow. "Go," she breathed, quietly. They led the horses back up the slope, moving as fast as they dared while still maintaining silence. It was not until they were reunited with their own mounts and a good half-mile away that Owen allowed himself to relax. "That was incredible," he said, unable to keep the admiration from his voice. "I have never seen anyone move like that." Aiyana's teeth flashed white in the darkness. "I told you I was good." They rode through the night, putting distance between themselves and the thieves. When they finally stopped to rest a few hours before dawn, both were exhausted but exhilarated. They had done it, reclaimed the horses without violence, without anyone getting hurt. Owen built a small, smokeless fire, and they huddled close to it as the desert night worked its peculiar magic, turning cold enough to make them shiver after the brutal heat of the day. Aiyana leaned against him and he wrapped an arm around her shoulders, marveling at how natural it felt. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "I return these horses to Tom Berkeley. He will be grateful and he will pay me what he promised. Then..." He paused. "Then I come back." "If you will have me." Aiyana tilted her head to look up at him. "Come back where? To the canyon?" "Wherever you are. I meant what I said earlier. I do not want to lose you, Aiyana. I know we have only known each other 2 days, and I know there are 100 reasons why this cannot work. But I also know that I have never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. That has to mean something." She was quiet for a long moment, and Owen's heart sank, thinking she was searching for a kind way to reject him. But then she spoke, her voice soft but certain. In my culture, we do not have long courtships like white people do. When two people recognize each other, when they know, they simply know. My grandmother says the right person fits against your spirit like a hand in a glove. Everything just works. She paused. You fit, Owen Garrett. Against my spirit, against my life. I do not know how we will make this work, but I know I want to try. Owen felt something unlock in his chest, a tightness he had carried for so long he had forgotten it was there. He kissed her again, and this time there was no hesitation, no uncertainty. This was right. Impossible, perhaps, but right. They stayed like that until the fire burned down to embers and the first hint of dawn began to gray the eastern sky. Then they doused the fire, mounted up, and continued south with their reclaimed herd. It took them 2 more days of hard riding to reach Tom Berkeley's ranch outside of Tucson. The old rancher came out of his house at a run when he saw his precious horses being led into the yard, his weathered face splitting into a huge grin. "Owen Garrett, you did it," he exclaimed, practically dancing around the black stallion, checking him over for injuries. "And the mare too, and she is still carrying her foal. I was sure they would have sold her off or worse." "They were planning to sell them in Wickenburg," Owen said, dismounting. "We got to them first." Berkeley finally noticed Aiyana and his expression grew cautious. "And who might this be?" "This is Aiyana. She helped me track them and reclaim your horses. I could not have done it without her." Owen's voice held a note of warning. If Berkeley had a problem with Aiyana being Apache, they were going to have words, but the old rancher surprised him. He walked over to Aiyana and held up his hand in greeting. "Then I owe you my thanks as well, miss. These horses mean everything to my breeding program. You have my gratitude." Aiyana inclined her head, accepting the thanks with dignity. Berkeley paid Owen in gold coin, counting out the agreed-upon sum plus a generous bonus. "For getting them back in such good condition," he explained, "and for bringing them back faster than I dared hope." Owen pocketed half the money and offered the rest to Aiyana. "Your share." She looked at the coins, then at him. "I did not do this for money. I know. But you did the work, you earned the pay. Take it. Use it for your people, use it for yourself. It does not matter to me, but it is yours." After a moment's hesitation, she accepted the coins. Owen knew that gold could buy many things the band needed, things they could not make or find themselves. She was thinking of them, always thinking of her people. They stayed the night at Berkeley's ranch, and the old man proved to be a gracious host, offering them a real meal and beds in his guest house. Over dinner, he told them stories of the old days when this country had been even wilder than it was now, when the Apache and the white settlers had sometimes managed to live as neighbors rather than enemies. "Things have gotten worse," Berkeley said sadly. "Fear on both sides and politicians who would rather have war than peace because war is more profitable. But I remember when it was different. I remember trading with Apache bands, learning from them, respecting them. That is how it should be." Aiyana listened politely but said little. Owen could see the skepticism in her eyes. Men like Berkeley might remember the old ways with fondness, but they were a dying breed. The future seemed to belong to those who saw the Apache as obstacles to be removed. That night, Owen could not sleep. He lay in the too-soft bed in Berkeley's guest house, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Aiyana in the room next door. They had not spoken about what would happen next, and the uncertainty gnawed at him. He heard his door open quietly and sat up to find Aiyana silhouetted in the doorway. "I cannot sleep either," she whispered. "Can I come in?" "Of course." She closed the door and came to sit on the edge of his bed. In the moonlight streaming through the window, she looked ethereal, almost unreal. "I have been thinking," she said, "about what we talked about. About making our own way. And and I think I know how to do it. There is a place, about 3 days' ride from here, where the mountains meet the desert. It is beautiful and isolated, with water and game. It is too remote for settlers, and the army has never bothered with it. My people know of it but do not use it because it is considered a place between worlds, neither here nor there. She took his hand. We could build a life there, together, away from both our peoples but near enough that I could still visit my family. Owen felt hope bloom in his chest. You would do that? Leave your band? I would not be leaving them, not really. I would just be living separately. It is not so unusual. Married couples sometimes build their own camp away from the main group. She paused, and even in the dim light he could see her cheeks darken. That is, if you want to marry me. I am assuming, perhaps wrongly. Owen laughed, unable to help himself. You are not assuming wrongly. Aiyana, I would marry you right now if we could find someone to do it. In my culture, marriage is simpler than in yours. We do not need a priest or a judge. We simply declare our intention before witnesses and exchange gifts. We are married because we say we are married. Then let us do that. Tomorrow, before we leave, we will tell Berkeley, make it official. Aiyana smiled and leaned forward to kiss him. Tomorrow, she agreed. But for tonight, can I just stay here with you? I do not want to be alone. You never have to be alone again. She slipped under the blankets beside him, and they lay together fully clothed, holding each other, talking quietly about their plans and dreams until exhaustion finally claimed them both. In the morning, they told Tom Berkeley what they intended. The old rancher looked startled, then thoughtful, then slowly pleased. Well, I will be damned, he said. An Apache woman and a white tracker. You two have courage, I will give you that. The world will not make it easy for you. We know, Owen said, but we are going to try anyway. Berkeley nodded slowly. Then let me be your witness. Tell me what you need me to do. Following Aiyana's instruction, they stood together in Berkeley's yard under the morning sun. Aiyana spoke first in Apache, her voice clear and strong. Then she translated. I, Aiyana Otsana, claim this man, Owen Garrett, as my husband. I will walk beside him, share his burdens, and give him my loyalty all my days. Owen spoke next, repeating the words she had taught him. I, Owen Garrett, claim this woman, Aiyana Otsana, as my wife. I will walk beside her, share her burdens, and give her my loyalty all my days. Then came the exchange of gifts. Aiyana had been working on something the night before, and now she revealed it. A bracelet woven from horsehair and leather, decorated with small turquoise beads. She tied it around Owen's wrist, and it fit perfectly, snug but comfortable. This is so you will always have a part of me with you, she said softly. So you will remember where you belong. Owen had not known about the gift exchange, had nothing prepared. He felt a moment of panic before remembering the gold coins in his pocket. He pressed them into her hands. This is not romantic, he admitted, but it is practical. Use it to help your people, to build our home, to do whatever you need. Everything I have is yours. Aiyana's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Everything I have is yours, she echoed. Tom Berkeley cleared his throat. Well then, I guess that makes you married, by Apache law at least. Congratulations to you both. I hope you find happiness together. They left Berkeley's ranch that afternoon, heading east toward the place Aiyana had described. Owen kept touching the bracelet on his wrist, hardly able to believe that he was now a married man, bound to this extraordinary woman who rode beside him. The journey to their new home took 4 days instead of 3 because they were in no hurry and stopped frequently to hunt and rest. Aiyana taught Owen more about reading the desert, about finding water in unlikely places, about which plants were edible and which would kill you. He proved to be a quick study, soaking up knowledge like a sponge. On the fourth evening they crested a rise and Aiyana pointed down into a valley below. "There," she said. "That is the place." Owen looked and caught his breath. The valley was perhaps a mile wide, ringed by red rock cliffs that glowed like fire in the setting sun. A creek ran through it, lined with cottonwood trees that promised year-round water. There was grass for horses, shelter from the elements, and a wild beauty that took his breath away. "It is perfect," he said. They rode down into the valley as the sun set, and that night they made camp under the stars, planning where they would build their home, how they would live. Aiyana said her people could help them build a proper wickiup, and Owen thought he could construct a small cabin over time, something that would stand up to the harsh winters that sometimes came to the high desert. That night, they consummated their marriage under the open sky, with only the stars as witnesses. It was tender and passionate and awkward and perfect, two people learning each other, giving themselves to each other completely. Afterward, they lay tangled together, and Owen thought he had never been happier in his entire life. "I love you," he said, the words feeling both inadequate and exactly right. "I know it is fast. I know we barely know each other, but I love you, Aiyana." She pressed her hand against his heart, feeling it beat steady and strong. "I love you too, Owen. My grandmother would say we have known each other many lifetimes. This is just the first one we both remember." The next weeks passed in a blur of hard work and deep satisfaction. Aiyana's family came to help them build, and if Nantai and Chesmu had reservations about their daughter marrying a white man, they kept them to themselves. They brought supplies and labor, and together they constructed a sturdy wickiup and started work on a small cabin that would provide additional shelter. Owen proved himself willing to learn and work, and gradually he earned the respect of Aiyana's relatives. He learned to speak basic Apache, helped hunt for the whole group, and showed genuine interest in their ways and customs. He was never going to be Apache himself, but he could be a friend and ally, someone who respected their culture rather than trying to destroy it. Tom Berkeley visited once, bringing gifts of seed and tools and a milk cow. "For your homestead," he said. "Every home needs a good cow." The old rancher looked around at what they were building, at the way Aiyana's family and Owen worked together, and he smiled. "You are making something good here. Something that gives me hope for this territory." As autumn turned to winter, Owen and Aiyana settled into their new life. They hunted together, worked together, made plans for the future. Sometimes they traveled to nearby towns where Owen could find tracking work, and they used the money to buy things they could not make themselves. Other times they visited the band's canyon, bringing gifts and staying for days at a time. It was not always easy. They faced suspicion and hostility from white townspeople who did not approve of a white man married to an Apache woman. They faced questions from Aiyana's people about whether she was abandoning her heritage. But they faced it together, and that made all the difference. In the spring, Aiyana realized she was pregnant. She told Owen one evening as they sat outside their completed cabin, watching the sun set over the valley that had become their home. He was speechless for a moment, then whooped with joy and spun her around, careful not to hold too tight. "We are going to have a baby. We are going to have a baby," she confirmed, laughing at his excitement. Their son was born in late autumn of 1877, with Aiyana's mother and grandmother attending the birth while Owen paced outside, terrified and thrilled in equal measure. When Chesmu finally emerged and told him he had a healthy son, he felt tears stream down his face. They named him Nathan, after no one in particular, just because they both liked the name. He had Owen's gray eyes and Aiyana's dark hair, and he was perfect in every way. Watching Aiyana with their son, Owen felt his heart might burst. She was a natural mother, patient and loving, singing Apache lullabies and teaching Nathan the names of things in both English and Apache from the moment he was born. As Nathan grew from baby to toddler to young boy, Owen and Aiyana's life found a rhythm. They added a daughter 2 years after Nathan, naming her Sarah. Then another son called Michael. Their valley home became a place where both cultures mixed freely, where white ranchers like Tom Berkeley could sit down to share a meal with Apache hunters, where languages and traditions blended into something new. It was not perfect. The wars between the Apache and the American government continued, getting worse before they would ever get better. There were times when Aiyana's people had to hide in their canyon, times when Owen could not visit certain towns because someone had recognized him as that white man married to an Apache. There were times when their children faced cruelty from other children, mocked for being half-breeds, belonging nowhere. But there were also moments of profound beauty and joy. Nathan's first successful hunt. Sarah learning to weave from her grandmother, creating intricate baskets that were works of art. Michael's first words, spoken in a blend of English and Apache that made both his parents laugh. The evenings when the whole family would sit outside, and Aiyana would tell stories from her people, while Owen pointed out constellations and told tales of places far from the desert. Owen never took off the bracelet Aiyana had woven for him on their wedding day. It became part of him, worn and faded but still strong. When people asked about it, he would say, "My wife made it for me. It reminds me where I belong." And he did belong, absolutely and completely. He belonged in this valley, in this life they had built together. He belonged with Aiyana, his wife, his partner, his best friend. He belonged with his children, who were the physical proof that two worlds could come together and create something beautiful. One evening when Nathan was 10, Sarah was 8, and Michael was 6, the whole family sat outside watching the stars. Nathan asked the question that had been on his mind for weeks. "Papa, why did you and Mama get married? You are so different from each other." Owen looked at Aiyana and she smiled at him, the same smile that had captured his heart all those years ago. "Because sometimes different is exactly what you need," Owen said. "I was lost before I met your mother. I did not know it, but I was wandering through life without any real purpose. Then I rode into her camp one day, half dead from the sun, and she saved my life." "I just gave you water," Aiyana protested. "You gave me much more than water. You gave me a reason to be better than I was. You gave me a home." He held up his wrist, showing the faded bracelet. "Your mother wove this for me the day we got married. And from that day on, we wove our lives together, thread by thread, day by day. That is what marriage is. That is what love is." Sarah moved closer to her mother. "Tell us about the first time you saw Papa." Aiyana gathered her daughter close. "I saw a stubborn man who would not give up even when he should have. I saw someone who treated his horse as well as himself, which told me he had a good heart. I saw gray eyes that looked at me like I was a person, not a savage or an enemy, just a person. And I felt something shift inside me, like a door opening that I had not known was closed." "That is beautiful, Mama," Sarah sighed. "It is the truth." Aiyana looked at Owen over their children's heads, and the love in her eyes had not dimmed one bit in all their years together. If anything, it had grown stronger, deeper, more complex and resilient. The years continued to roll by, bringing changes and challenges. The Apache Wars finally ended with Geronimo's surrender in 1886, though the peace that followed was bitter for Aiyana's people, most of whom were forced onto reservations. Aiyana's band managed to stay free a while longer, but eventually even they had to submit or face annihilation. It was a dark time, but Owen and Aiyana's home became a refuge. They helped relocate some families who could not bear the reservation, hiding them in remote canyons, bringing them supplies, advocating for them with the few sympathetic Indian agents who existed. It was dangerous work that could have gotten them both arrested or killed, but they persisted because it was the right thing to do. Their children grew into remarkable young adults. Nathan became a skilled tracker like his father, but used his abilities to help the Apache navigate the new reality of reservation life, finding legal ways to challenge unjust policies. Sarah became a teacher, educating both white and Apache children, bridging the gap between cultures. Michael chose ranching, working with Tom Berkeley until the old man died and left his ranch to Michael in his will, calling him the grandson I never had. Owen and Aiyana watched their children build their own lives with pride and satisfaction. They had done what they set out to do, created a family that belonged to both worlds and neither, that could move between cultures with grace and confidence. On a warm spring evening in 1895, nearly 20 years after that dust devil had first brought Owen to Aiyana's camp, they sat together on the porch of their cabin. They were in their 40s now, their hair showing touches of silver, their faces lined by years of sun and work and laughter. But when they looked at each other, they still saw the young people they had been, full of hope and determination and love. "You ever regret it?" Owen asked, a question that had been on his mind. "Choosing this life, choosing me." Aiyana took his hand, the one that still wore the bracelet she had woven so long ago, now so faded it was barely more than threads. "Never, not once, not even in the hardest times." "We have grandchildren now," Owen said, marveling at the fact. Nathan had married a woman from his mother's band and they had 2 children. Sarah had married a teacher from Tucson and they had 1 child with another on the way. Even Michael was courting a rancher's daughter. "We are getting old. We are getting wise," Aiyana corrected. "There is a difference, and we still have many years ahead of us if we are lucky." They were lucky. They had many more years together, watching their family grow and flourish, watching the territory change around them, watching the old give way to the new. Through it all, they remained constant, the love that had sparked between them in a single afternoon never diminishing. When Owen died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 68, in the year 1910, the bracelet was still on his wrist. Aiyana buried him in their valley, beneath a cottonwood tree they had planted together when they first arrived. She wove a new bracelet and buried it with him, so he would have something of hers in the next world as he had in this one. She lived another 12 years, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all of whom carried forward the legacy of 2 people who had dared to love across boundaries that others said could not be crossed. When she died at the age of 76, her family buried her beside Owen, reuniting them in death as they had been in life. Their valley remained in the family, passing down through generations. The cabin still stands, preserved as a reminder of what can be built when people choose love over fear, when they see each other as human beings rather than as representatives of opposing sides. And if you visit that valley on a quiet evening when the sun is setting and the wind is soft, some say you can still feel their presence there. 2 spirits woven together so completely that not even death could separate them. The story of Aiyana and Owen became a legend in that part of Arizona, told and retold, changing with each telling but always keeping its essential truth. That love, real love, can bridge any divide and create something lasting and beautiful. Their great-great-grandchildren still live in Arizona, a blended family that carries both Apache and European heritage, that speaks multiple languages and honors multiple traditions. They are the living proof that Aiyana and Owen's gamble paid off, that the life they wove together produced something stronger and more valuable than either culture alone could have created. The bracelet, the original one Aiyana wove for Owen on their wedding day, was preserved by the family. It sits now in a small museum in Phoenix, a fragile thing of horsehair and leather and love, protected under glass. The placard beside it tells the story in brief. Marriage bracelet, woven by Aiyana Otsana for Owen Garrett, 1876, worn by him every day until his death in 1910. Symbol of a love that transcended cultural boundaries and created a lasting legacy. But the real story is so much richer than any placard could convey. It is a story of a chance meeting, of water offered to a stranger in desperate need. It is a story of two people who recognized in each other something essential and true. It is a story of courage and commitment, of choosing to build something new rather than accepting the limitations others tried to impose. It is a story of a bracelet woven with care and worn with pride, of lives woven together with patience and love, of a family woven from two cultures into something entirely their own. It is, above all, a love story. And like all true love stories, it has no real ending because love like that echoes forward through time, shaping the future in ways both seen and unseen, reminding us that the most important boundaries to cross are the ones we build in our own hearts.